Have you ever finished a really significant book, maybe one about a major historical moment, and then just stopped and wondered, how strong are these arguments really? How do we figure out what's actual fact, what's maybe just a strong opinion, and what genuinely shapes how we see things? Today, we're going to dig into I Alone Can Fix It by Carol Leonnig and Philip Rucker. We're not just, summarizing it. We're using this book almost like a lens, to look closely at a really critical and, let's face it, pretty turbulent time in recent history.
Absolutely. And our mission here for you is, well, it's pretty clear. We want to rigorously examine this book. We're using a systematic critique framework, which basically lets us go way beyond just telling you what's in it. The goal is to help you really grasp its core claims, evaluate the evidence they present, and think about the bigger picture, the implications. It's about getting to the heart of what makes an historical account not just readable, but truly reliable and impactful.
And just so you know, what you're experiencing here is actually a unique two-host AI conversation. It's powered by Google's NotebookLM, and it's designed specifically for a deeper, more dynamic kind of book analysis. Okay, so let's lay some groundwork first. The authors, Carol Leonnig and Philip Rucker, both Pulitzer winners, journalists at the Washington Post. That sets a certain standard right there.
It does.
Their main thesis, the core argument in the book, is that Donald Trump's final year in office saw his leadership plunge the country into, well, what they frame as a historical crisis.
Yeah.
They argue he undermined democracy, public health, and a lot of the norms around presidential conduct we'd kind of taken for granted.
Genre-wise, it's straight-up nonfiction.
Yeah.
Investigative journalism, a slice of political history, and the focus is laser sharp. 2020. Just that 1 year, but what a year, right?
Oh,
You've got Trump's first impeachment wrapping up, the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, the huge George Floyd protests, the 2020 election itself, all the attempts to overturn it, and then everything leading up to January 6th. It's a massive amount to cover in one book, even focus on 1 year.
Right. All right, so let's really start to unpack this. I mean, the heart of any serious historical account, any good journalism really, it comes down to the claims being made and the evidence backing them up. So what are the big arguments this book makes, and how do Leonnig and Rucker actually substantiate them?
Okay, so the book puts forward several major claims. A huge one, maybe the most obvious, is that the Trump administration fundamentally failed to manage the COVID-19 pandemic effectively. And they don't just say that. They support it with very specific accounts, details about downplaying the virus early on.
I remember reading about the Amy Coney Barrett nomination event.
Exactly. That's a key example they use. How it was mishandled. It became a super spreader event. They also document specific instances of staff getting exposed right inside the White House. The narrative really paints a picture of an administration either unable or maybe unwilling to grasp the sheer scale of the crisis.
And it's not just about public health, is it? There's this undercurrent, or maybe it's overt, suggesting that personal political survival often seemed to trump, pardon the pun, the public good.
Precisely. That's another central claim. And the evidence for that comes through these really detailed accounts of the efforts to overturn the 2020 election results. They describe it as actively encouraging grievance, minimizing threats that weren't about his own position. And a really fascinating thread running through it all is how key figures inside the administration were apparently trying to, restrain things, put the brakes on.
Like General Milley. He comes up a lot.
Yes, General Mark Milley, chairman of the Joint Chiefs at the time. He's depicted very clearly as a kind of counterweight, trying to push back against what the authors describe as impulsive actions, especially around potentially using the military against protesters. The book really positions him as a key figure trying to maintain some institutional stability.
Okay, so these are some pretty heavy claims. How strong is the evidence they actually bring to the table? What kind of sourcing are we talking about here?
Yeah, that's crucial. And our analysis suggests the sourcing is actually a major strength of the book. They rely on really extensive direct interviews, apparently including 2 full hours with Trump himself, which is, well, significant.
Wow, okay.
And beyond that, they reportedly had access to literally hundreds of other sources to back things up. Yeah. The sheer volume and breadth of sourcing, it really suggests they went wide and deep to gather information from all sorts of viewpoints inside and around the administration. It definitely adds a layer of credibility.
So thinking about the bigger picture, how does the book connect these actions, these events, to the fundamental aims of the U.S. government, the ideals in the preamble to the Constitution?
That's a really interesting angle our critique framework explores. It looks at those foundational civic responsibilities. The book argues, for instance, that Trump actively fueled division instead of unity, which directly undermines that goal of forming a more perfect union.
Makes sense.
Then it digs into the attempts to subvert the election results, arguing that challenges the goal to establish justice, ensuring fair processes. The narrative describes widespread unrest, uncertainty, violence, suggesting a real loss of domestic tranquility.
Right.
And it portrays attempts to potentially use the military on U.S. soil as a threat to the idea of common defense, which is usually about external threats. Plus, the way the pandemic and the racial justice protests were handled is framed as undermining the general welfare.
And the last one, liberty.
Exactly. The book focuses quite a bit on executive overreach, perceived threats to civil liberties, arguing that directly impacted the blessings of liberty for citizens. It really tries to tie the specific actions back to these core constitutional principles.
Now, in any story like this, especially one so politically charged, it's really easy for facts and opinions to get jumbled up. How well does this book do at helping you, the reader, tell the difference?
That's always a challenge, isn't it?
Yeah.
Our assessment is that the book actually handles this distinction pretty well, for the most part. You'll see character judgments for, sources calling Trump unhinged or describing someone's emotional state. Those are generally presented clearly as opinions, often attributed directly to the source.
Okay.
But then the factual recounting of events, like here's the COVID timeline, here are the election dates, here's a direct quote from this official, that stuff is usually well-sourced, often corroborated, that forms the sort of factual backbone of the narrative. It seems like they made a real effort to separate what demonstrably happened from how people felt about it or interpreted it.
So it's not just a list of facts, though. It's about connecting those facts.
Yeah.
How does the book help us move from just knowing what happened to gaining a deeper understanding, maybe even some wisdom about that whole period?
Yeah, I think it does that effectively by weaving together these different threads. It connects, say, the pandemic response with the racial unrest after George Floyd's murder, and then with the election challenges. It shows how these weren't isolated incidents, but how they built on each other, impacting governance, impacting the national mood. This connection helps you move from just knowing facts to really understanding the dynamics of that year.
And the wisdom part.
Implicitly, I think the wisdom conveyed is a warning. Through the detailed accounts, the authors strongly suggest that unchecked executive power, especially when it disregards norms, poses a real danger to democratic institutions. By showing the consequences, they're implicitly advocating for respecting those norms, those constitutional limits. That feels like a form of practical wisdom about maintaining a stable republic.
Okay, let's shift gears slightly to the ethical side of things. How does the book grapple with the moral considerations, the ethics of the decisions and actions it describes, either explicitly or implicitly?
Well, when we apply an ethical lens, like thinking about the golden rule, would leaders want these actions done to them? It highlights some issues.
Yeah.
Many decisions depicted, like efforts to politicize the military or publicly disparaging opponents, they often seem to fail that basic test of moral reciprocity.
Suggesting an empathy deficit.
It definitely suggests that, yeah. And it raises really big questions about the moral obligations of leadership and the potential long-term risks if that kind of approach becomes normalized. And the narrative doesn't shy away from showing the disproportionate impact. Pandemic mismanagement hitting marginalized communities harder, for example, or how handling the racial justice protests inflamed tensions. It connects actions to real-world ethical consequences.
What about the narrative structure itself? Is it logically put together? And importantly, are there any potential biases we should be aware of, either from the authors or maybe reflected in their sources?
Logically, yeah. The narrative flows well. It's generally consistent, follows a pretty clear chronological path, and anchors itself in evidence. That makes it easy for you to follow along. Now, regarding bias, our analysis did pick up on what some reviewers mention: potential hindsight bias from sources.
Meaning people making themselves look better after the fact.
Kind of, yeah. Where individuals looking back might frame their own role or decisions in a more favorable light than maybe was the case at the time. It's a common issue in this kind of reporting. The book tries to mitigate this by using direct quotes and first-person accounts heavily, which helps. But it probably doesn't eliminate it entirely.
Anything else on bias?
Some reviewers feel the overall tone carries a sort of presumption of incompetence regarding Trump's actions. While the authors link his rhetoric and actions to dysfunction, some readers might feel it doesn't fully explore alternative interpretations or complexities. It's something to be aware of and weigh against the specific evidence presented.
Right. Okay, let's just pause for a second here. Reflecting on how we actually analyze and engage with important books like this one, you might be interested to know that this kind of systematic approach, the framework we're using in this deep dive, is something we explore even further.
That's right. For more in-depth AI book analysis, the kind that really aims to inspire a reflection and rational thought, you should definitely check out Mindful Moments. That's our YouTube channel. It's designed precisely to help you process complex information like this and find that deeper meaning to get beyond just the surface level.
Okay, so moving back to the book and its broader implications, what kind of wisdom, if any, does it offer about the long-term effects, social, economic, ethical, of the events it covers?
Well, from that wisdom assessment angle, the book serves as a pretty stark implicit warning. It suggests that intense, executive-centered partisanship and the breaking of established norms can seriously erode democratic institutions and public trust for years, maybe even generations. It's a cautionary tale about democratic fragility.
Does it get into economics much?
It touches on it, yeah. It details government mismanagement, the economic strain from messing up the pandemic response. But it doesn't offer a deep, dedicated economic analysis. That's not its primary focus. Ethically, though, it hammers home some profound questions about moral leadership. What are the real obligations of leaders? Is it just about power, or is it about serving all constituents and upholding high ethical standards? The book really forces you to think about that.
So after going through this whole critique, pulling it all together for you listening, what's the balanced takeaway on I alone can fix it? What are its main strengths and conversely, its potential weaknesses?
Okay, strengths first. It is, without doubt, meticulously researched, hundreds of interviews, detailed sourcing that makes it a really robust, well-supported account of that specific, intense period. Huge strength.
And it reads well, right?
Absolutely. It's widely praised for being engaging, accessible. The narrative style makes it very readable, even if you're not someone who typically dives into dense political books. And crucially, it really highlights the chaos, yes, but also the concrete dangers that can arise from unchecked executive power. It gives you a vivid sense of norms being seriously tested.
Okay, and on the flip side, the areas where it might draw criticism or maybe isn't as strong.
Well, as we touched on, some reviewers definitely question a potential bias. Given the author's background at the Washington Post, some might perceive a particular slant. And the hindsight issue with sources, that's a recurring point.
Yeah.
Sources might, intentionally or not, polish their own image looking back.
The tone, too.
The critical tone, yeah. Some feel it might oversimplify opposing viewpoints or motivations, that it presents a narrative that's maybe a bit too neat in its criticism. And finally, our analysis points out that the book really zooms in on the drama and the dysfunction, more so than on the fine points of policy. Now, that makes it a gripping read, definitely a strength for engagement. But if you're looking for deep policy analysis, that might feel like a weakness.
So as we start to wrap up this deep dive, these kinds of analyses always leave you with lingering questions, things to chew on after the conversation ends. What are some of those unresolved questions that you, the listener, might want to consider after reflecting on this book?
Yeah, two big ones really stand out for me. First, how lasting will the disruption of democratic norms that the book documents actually be? I mean, will things snap back or have some fundamental shifts occurred? That's a huge open question.
And the second?
The second is about context. Do the authors provide enough context? Do they sufficiently place these events within broader historical or political trends? Or is there a risk, even inadvertently, of over-personalizing issues that might actually be symptoms of deeper, more systemic breakdowns in governance or political culture?
Those are definitely big questions, worth pondering.
Absolutely. They take you beyond just the book itself.
Applying a systematic framework like this to a book, especially one like I Alone Can Fix It, it really does let us move past just a simple summary. It invites us and invites you into a much more informed understanding of its arguments, its evidence, and its implications.
We really hope this deep dive has given you some valuable insights, maybe some new ways to think about a pivotal moment in recent history, hopefully helping you gain knowledge quickly but also thoroughly.
And remember, if you want more enlightening book analysis, summaries, critiques, maybe explore some of the other content from Mindful Moments or our podcasts. There's more to discover.
Just click the link you see on screen. That'll take you straight to Mindful Moments for more enlightening book analysis, summaries, and critiques.